like cancer. Even if they disappear, something else terrible will come in its place. So
Yep, Joe,
let's just hope.
that's Joe's philosophy.
Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel. We're a podcast about anime, games, entertainment, life, a little bit of everything between. I'm your host, as always, Joe, and with me, the movie buff, the fanatic, the man who loves anything to do with Borderlands, has a lower third tattoo of Claptrap, just lovingly called the Trap Stamp. Nick, how you doing, Nick?
Doing pretty good, yeah. Borderlands, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know that it's my favorite. And I am going to get a Borderlands movie tattoo probably on my neck, maybe on my uh maybe like under my lip, so I can show it to get into a particular club because there's a club of us down here. And yeah, it's definitely, a franchise that I've played more than a couple hours of. And I am not daunted at all by the 0% it has on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
I
Um,
figured you'd just get a giant tattoo of Kevin Hart on your neck, and
I
maybe
do.
like a Jamie Lee Curtis under the lip or something like that.
I
So
do have those and Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not Jamie Lee Curtis. It's not her name. It's her face on Arnold Schwarzenegger's body, and it's very small, but it's very clear if you have a good, powerful lens to look at it with in the right light. And yeah, Kevin Hart. I do have a Kevin Hart tattoo on my neck. I just covered up with makeup every time. That's why it takes a long time for us to get this podcast going because we're doing all of the research, and I have to be in makeup for like, 45 minutes for them to make it. Because like, I don't want to shave all the time, so sometimes they have to shave that area and then makeup over it and then put a like a stubble prosthesis, if you could even call that, on the area. Yeah, it takes time. I'm really dedicated to continuity on this podcast, and I would never want to forsake our very faithful five or so listeners uh, in that respect. How are you doing, Joe?
doing all right. Most definitely better than those reviews. But I mean, you'd be happy to know that as of right now, it's sitting at a whopping 8%. So
See,
an 800%
going up.
increase from what you just mentioned. Well, actually, any percentage above a zero, like infinite.
I guess it's
So
infinitely
a
higher.
user fan of fan rate of 52% as of right now. Today, it's released earlier today. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, who could have saw the Borderlands movie not being a success? Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. I do know someone in real life who actually has the Bolt emblem tattooed on their inner forearm, and I was just like, they did it after Borderlands 2.
Mm,
Um, but they also have a lot of good memories associated with gaming with their buddies, and I'm like, I can totally understand that. But then Borderlands 3 came out. I'm like, ooh, I bet you're regretting it just a little bit now. But they're very much committed to the bit where they're like, no, it's great. It's still great. I'm like, you know what? It would still be great if you're just goofing with friends, because even mediocre games are excellent when you're playing with a good group. Um,
yeah.
so we'll
Says
see
the
how
guy
that,
that finished, what was that vampire game? Uh,
yes, exactly. What was that vampire game? Um,
I already forgot it. What was it called?
Redfall.
Redfall. That's it. That's nothing. Yep. Okay. Yeah. See. Yeah. I mean, you're our resident expert on mediocre
I
games that you can play with friends.
yeah, I finished the game. Mediocre multiplayer games. I'm your man. I just need to find the right people to play with. Um, I mean, I finished the game, and you know what? So did the studio. They finished with them too. But
Gosh.
yeah, the
But
uh,
I mean, tattoos are hard. Um, because if you get any tattoo of a property that you don't own, well, all I can say is eventually every property is going to be remade and ruined. Maybe not on the next remake, but eventually it's going to be remade and ruined. Um, and you're still going to have that tattoo. So if you get it when you're 20 and it's a good like first run of the series, then they might remake it when you're like 35 or 40, and then it's going to suck. But then when you're 60, it might be good again, but it might actually just be worse, which is what I would bet on, which is why I don't have
You
any
talking about like all
tattoos.
those people who name their kids Khaleesi after the first season of Game of Thrones,
Dude,
and they're like,
dude. Yeah, they named her, it's Daenerys, which Daenerys is a really pretty name when you think it, when it's like, oh,
no,
okay,
no.
that's cool.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure like that year it was people were naming their kids Khaleesi, not even, and that was the joke was like that's not even the character name,
Oh, okay.
that is a title. So and like it was one of the most popular names of like girls that year, and they were like misnaming their kids.
I believe that, but also people that live, I was about to make a mean joke. People that are a little smarter than that were naming their kid like a little bit, just a little bit smarter than that, were naming their children Daenerys. And then the final season, spoilers for Game of Thrones, I'm not going to go hard, but it did not turn out well for the person named Daenerys in a like a comparisons to Hitler sort of way.
Just
Um,
because you arbitrarily go scorched earth, and yeah, it's I don't know. I just had the whole last season. I just had everything spoiled for me by a buddy of mine because I'm like, just tell me because I gave up in season 3, so just give me the TLDR, and they had a fun time venting to me about that because they're like everything was good until then, and then like
I would
I'm
say
glad I did not spend my years with that.
I would say you probably got out a little too early, but most people think that you you should have you general just people
Yeah, what
the
do you
be,
mean, you people?
you people that people in general were best to get out like at what did it go 8 seasons, like 2 seasons or whatever before the end. It was like the best time to dip, and I'm pretty sure I'm kind of okay with that. I'm I'm okay with a lot of the last season, but the Daenerys stuff I'm not okay with. Um, and yeah, so that's all I have to say about tattoos and Game of Thrones.
All right, great. Now let's move on to some news.
Oh, the news. Okay. First up, probably the biggest news right now: Netflix anime leak. There was a leak of anime, and not like, oh, this is what we're making, but like, oh, this is like a lot like full episodes, not finished per se, like still rough around the edges, but more or less content complete. Episodes of Arcane, Terminator Zero, Dan to Dan, Ranma Half, and then Mononoke the movie apparently. Oh yeah, and Re Zero season 3. So those there's just a bunch that got leaked, full episodes. It looks like there might I don't think that they're all in order. I think Arcane, maybe it was just maybe I was mishearing what you were saying, but like just episode 2 or something of the new Arcane season. Anyway,
No, episode it's season 2. So they
oh,
showed
okay.
it. There was at least some season 2 stuff for that. Um, apparently there were some other things that weren't originally on that initial list, but it was one of those things that I didn't realize that they were coming out with like a Ranma 1/2 remake,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of those things I'm like, man, Netflix. I'm hoping they're not producing it, but they probably are. I'm like, that's a show that does not need to be remade in this time in it like day and age because
Yeah.
Like the original Ranma One Half is a classic, and it's funny and it's quirky, but it's also very much of a time. Um,
So by that
it's
you mean
it's very culturally insensitive about like sexual harassment and just
okay.
overall sexual like themes. Uh, the old grandpa slash master of like head instructor of everybody. He's just this tiny little flea pervert guy who likes to go around stealing people's panties. It's like yeah, it's there's just a lot of things that are don't translate to that well in today's day and age. I mean, that in fact that Netflix like trying to remake anything old generally f's it up a lot,
Yeah.
and I just don't trust them to handle any you know modernization of any property. So yeah, I'm not really too thrilled about the idea of if they're depending on how involved they are. Now, in general, also I think the comedy just doesn't hit the way it used to because you're making the comedy was all slapstick and just like over the top goofiness. I'm gonna hit you into space, kind of like the old Team Rocket Blast Off. Uh, that was
Okay.
Team Rocket Blast Off wasn't funny when it aired in the U.S. the first time around,
I thought it was kind
but
of
that
funny.
was just. Of course you did,
I was like
but you were
10
like in
though.
yeah, I was gonna say you were like elementary school, so you were fine with it.
Yeah.
96 I think is when it came out. So maybe 97. Yeah, 97.
I wasn't watching it
So yeah,
until 99 probably, so yeah.
you weren't allowed to. Um, Yeah, I don't know, the that show, like I said, it's just Ranma is very much it's better to watch it as it was and not try to in my opinion, not try to rehash it, but also them trying to remake or finish up old stories doesn't really seem to pan out too well. I mean, I know they finished up Inuyasha, like, a decade later or something like that, and almost no one
Oh,
I know who actually liked Inuyasha the first time around ever finished it. Speaking about bad tattoos, well, someone had a good tattoo, but it was a really sweet tattoo of Inuyasha's brother. Like I remember back in the day.
yeah.
But then when that series never ended, I'm like, ooh, I wonder how he feels about that because it just ends. Like it doesn't. It just cliffhanger, just like, and we're not gonna finish the story at all. So I'm like, you're kind of committed to that now. That's a really good tattoo, though.
Every time anyone ever mentions Inuyasha or I see Inuyasha anywhere, or I think of Inuyasha at all, I just want to scream Kagome because I feel like every episode, 10 times an episode, Inuyasha is just yelling Kagome. Um,
Yeah, it wasn't. It was a neat. It was like neat art style, neat setting. The actual story itself wasn't that great,
yeah.
even back then. But I mean, it's all the same. The reason we bring up Inuyasha as well, though, is because it's all the same, creator. So,
Oh, okay. I was gonna say,
Rumiko, Takahashi, I think is but yeah, it's created Rama One Half, Inuyasha, a lot of other stuff. But I'm sorry, you were gonna say something?
well, I was gonna say that Netflix, from what I know, and I could be, I don't know about all their anime, but from what I know about the anime that they do air, they're pretty hands off as far as the creation of it. They seem to buy it. They seem to, I don't know if how much they're ordering, how much they're going, hey, we want this made, and then ordering a development studio or a animation studio rather to animate it. But it seems like stuff's getting animated, getting made, and then Netflix is bidding on it and winning or whatever, and getting it to air. As far as the Japanese anime, as far as like Western animation, I know that Arcane has was developed. Keep on saying developed. Was animated by Riot Studios, um, and I think they probably just kind of sold it to Netflix. So you're probably okay as far as Netflix not messing with it. You're Ranma half in a bad way. It just depends on whether the animation studio uh, can translate it to a modern context. But either way, when you're having to change stuff like that at all, it does give you pause. And then too, anytime that an old property that you like is being remade, you always have to hold your breath until it comes out, and because the more often than not, it's going to turn out to be a Cowboy Bebop remake. Then I'm not even going to say like a good one, but then a good remake.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I saw the Dan to Dan come out and not knowing anything about it, and showed you a little bit of the first episode and how so these episodes you can find on the internet and they
Uh,
are not in their finished product state, so they still have timestamps and markers. There was watermarks on some of them, so there's depending on what site you might be watching it from, they some of them scrub the watermarks out with just a blurry mosaic. So it's not
well,
necessarily the best quality or the ideal way to watch these things. Now, if you're just curious and thirsty for it, then yeah, it's out there for you. But honestly, if you want to find actually have the best time, then just chill out and wait. I mean, Netflix will bring it out soon enough, and then you'll be able to watch it in its the better quality. So
yeah, I mean, this happened years ago. Talking about Game of Thrones, when probably, gosh, I know I was still in Japan. One of those seasons, the first three episodes, I think, leaked, maybe a little bit more, before the season started, and HBO was just airing them like one at a time, and people went online and watched them, and then they had to wait until like more weeks, until the new episodes like came out. People were kind of making fun of them. Not that there's really anything to make fun of about that, but like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess Netflix typically puts everything out all at once, so they can't mock you for doing that. But if you do go and watch one of these because you like it or whatever, and you happen to have Netflix or whatever, I don't know, maybe try to let it play on Netflix one time while you're doing laundry or something like that. Just let it autoplay so that at least your views are counted some way, and or if you're saving money by ripping anime off the internet, maybe buy some merch every once in a while, just to vote with your dollar a little bit. We all have it hard, but especially if you like it, try to give some back to the creators. That's just a little PSA from me.
all right, and Nick's credit card information is. I mean,
That's
we're
fair.
voting with Nick's dollars. We
Voting
understand it.
not with my dollars, with your dollars. Um,
Um, So yes, no, for sure. I mean, just hopefully it won't. I'm more curious on how this happened, to what extent. There's not a lot of in depth, furthermore that I'm aware of about this. So it is kind of interesting that maybe they'll increase their safety protocols to help stop this from coming out in the future. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I'm also very curious about that Terminator Zero. I'm like,
yeah, what's going on
I don't
there?
know, man. Yeah, right? If if it's actually based on the Terminator franchise and not just, another thing called Terminator Zero, like, I could see them trying to pull that one out. It's like, our property is not Terminator, it's not Schwarzenegger, it's this other thing. We're just gonna steal the name, but we have Zero in there, so it's okay. But
Yeah,
it sounds, not knowing, literally the first time I heard about this was when this article came up, and I'm like, "So is this a Western property that it's like a Western animation type thing?" Um, and I'm just like I don't know how much it can be. Like it could be good, I guess. I mean, the Sarah Connor Chronicles was actually pretty solid for what little that lasted.
yeah. That I
Um,
heard that was actually pretty all right.
I, I mean, but it's one of those things that like you can do a lot of stuff. Uh, if it's a zero thing, a prequel thing, that means you can do a lot of the future stuff. Kind of like that Christian Bale movie I was trying to do, and I'm like, you have some, it's like the movie itself wasn't bad. It was just really there was just a lot of other stuff around it. But then of course it was better than the stuff that came out afterwards.
Yeah,
So
it was a missed opportunity. I kind of think they sold us all on Christian Bale, and he really wasn't in it very much. And I was so it had some good action, but it also by the end of the movie, I was kind of just like, dang it. I mean, I like Sam Worthington, but I just kind of felt bait and switched a little bit.
Is Sam Worthington, was he the guy who was also an Avatar?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I felt like that was his time. They were really doing a real push as him being
Oh
the
yeah,
next big action star, and I just felt like it just didn't work as like he doesn't really have a range um, that I felt that was anything worth it. And then also, um, what's his name? Is Kyle Reese, um, the guy who plays Chekhov in the Star Trek Beyond,
oh
he passed
yeah,
away after that movie. Yeah, it's just that was like it was a interesting cast type because you're making a scrawnier looking Kyle Reese. Kyle Reese was never jacked or anything like that, but he most definitely didn't fit the archetype of um, a strong male lead.
yeah,
So that was an interesting, but it's him growing as a character. So like that, I was actually very interested in the fact that like where will it go from here? That's kind of a neat twist. Um, and also you're looking at a John Connor who learns that not all machines are bad, and but then you realize he's being triggered by his old emotions from like Schwarzenegger being like he was my friend, but now I've learned to hate them all, you know. So, yes. Anyways, hopefully, I wouldn't mind having a nice, decent Terminator thing coming out, because unfortunately Terminator has not been that great for a while.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, what else we got then?
Next up, just a little bit of newsy news on some of this other stuff. The Dead Rising photo mode in the remake that's coming out. It used to give you points, like erotic points or whatever, for like up the skirt panty shots or something like that. I don't know all about it, but basically, I'm sure you're gonna fill us in. But basically, they are taking that aspect out because kind of like the Ranma half, it was a time and place, and that time and place has, as Stephen King put it, the world has moved on, and can't really do that anymore, especially if you have control over it as you remake it. They're just they're kind of like, yeah, we're not really gonna do that, and yeah,
Yeah, well, it's actually I forgot that that was even a thing in the original until the article. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, totally. Yep, that and they are right, absolutely right for taking that out because yeah, just once again, yeah, certain things that were socially okay with being like a pervy thing, like Ron Moen half and stuff like that. Like, nope, those things do not fly anymore. And there's no way you can explain that out. But at the same time, it's like it kind of is like good for you, Catcom, because Japanese companies still are sometimes in an old mindset of it's okay because it's what our gamers like. They're little
we're
perverts, and uh,
preserving the way that it was kind of argument or
well, I don't
you
think they'd
know.
argue that. I think it'd just be like this is just our sensibility, our sense of humor,
Oh
and
wow,
it's
okay.
more okay. And Japan tends to be a little bit more backwards in that.
That would
Uh,
be very
you know,
bold. That would be very bold in this day and age.
I don't know. They do a lot of stuff that's questionable in games and stuff to this day. So it's just like
Yeah,
uh, they're very. It's a culture of very much fan service and things like that to the otaku culture. So yeah, to have them change it and to have them own up to it. Granted, I think they realize the biggest market for this game is going to be the West, and they should appeal to current sensibilities. So good for them. I mean, it is the right move for sure.
yeah. I think you're probably right. Um, yeah. So that's good for them. Just two more things here. I don't know too much about all of this, but Mr. Beast is calling for a full assessment of his company's culture, for whatever that means. Kind of ongoing sort of scandal as to what really is really going on over there. There's a lot. There's a lot of things to say, probably, uh, that I don't know about completely. So, so this is definitely something that I'm going to keep my eyes on. But I feel like there's just a lot more time. This is going to have to take a long time to play out, because there's some pretty serious allegations, and it seems like it's just going to take a while before everybody knows everything. But at least, I mean, he's doing the bare minimum that he should be doing, which is trying to root out whatever the heck is going on over there. But also
Well,
there
which
is,
article were you looking off of? Like, were you
this is a Kotaku one.
because all right, because yeah, there's been a whole bunch of different things. So it's kind of there's you were talking about some stuff about like possible rigging of the videos and stuff like that, or you know I know there's been a big deal about the Ava Tyson, his one of his old colleagues slash like friend for a long time in the channel. I
Yeah.
don't actually know much about Mr. Beast, period. I've never watched a full video or anything like that. I've just never been in my wheelhouse, and the algorithm surprisingly never guided me there.
Yeah.
So,
I,
uh,
I I
um,
really, I really feel like I talked about this on an episode a while ago, but basically, because I'm remembering what I was reading, that there's his old colleague and kind of what he knew, what he didn't know, blah blah blah. So that's the probably the biggest or second biggest, maybe the biggest thing that needs to be sorted out. But
well, when you
along,
talk about company culture, that makes more sense because
yeah,
the way people act, the things that behind the scenes and have been doing for years, I can totally see that being the crux of that.
but some of the other things that may end up being on an equal footing as far as seriousness are concerned is like he's been filming some competitions and stuff like that, and people are complaining about not having proper facilities or not being fed properly, and kind of some kerfuffles and mistakes along those lines, some safety issues, um, outside of those other allegations. So there's a little there's more than one crack in the armor there, and then and those are the only two major things I know of. There's a or that I can remember in any detail, but there were a couple other smaller things that were like, and this is kind of weird, and this is sort of needs to be looked at. So yeah, it's time for full assessment of his company's culture, I would say, and we'll just have to see what shakes out. But I imagine, if I had to guess, I would imagine that the right people are going to be paid, and the lawsuits are gonna go away uh, pretty quickly, unless they are catastrophic. Um, but yeah, that's probably what's gonna happen. But yeah, they're gonna
Yeah.
probably figure it out.
All right. Well, when you're like one of the biggest brand names out there to date, it's uh,
Yeah,
there's bound to be a collapse at some point, and so hopefully they restructure it in a better way, or disappear. One of the two. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, unfortunately, like cancer, even if they disappear, something else terrible will come in its place. So
Yep, Joe.
let's just hope.
That's Joe's philosophy.
Hey, I have enough family members and people I know with cancer and reoccurring cancer. So yeah, it's like yeah, you win for now.
I am sorry
They
to
get the
hear that.
last laugh.
Yeah, death is undefeated so far. Um, okay.
All right. What else you got, bro?
One more little thing. Fate Stay Night.
Speaking
The
of cancer,
Speaking of
okay.
cancer and remasters. Uh, so anyway, so Fate Stay Night, the game was remastered and released on Steam literally like 2 days ago, I think. As of this recording, I think it was like August 7th, 6th, somewhere in there. Um, and yeah, so I bring this up because it came on my radar. I I often see things when I'm perusing the internet, um, and references, if you will. I see a lot of discussion about Fate Stay Night. I see a lot of, hey, this anime, and then there's a new one coming out, and there's an old one, and there's all this stuff. And finally, I was like, for a long time, I've been like, I should probably watch that or see what it's about eventually. And I finally did kind of go like, okay, what is this? Where do I start with it? Just not that I was going to, but if I wanted to start with it, where would I even start? I found out because I thought it was just an anime, or at least I thought it was an anime first. Found out it was a game first, and I was like, oh, it was a game first. Um, Also, it was an adult game or an eroge, if you will, that came out way back in 2004 for the PC, um, and it basically it I guess it was very popular, but it was popular, and they were like, hey, we should make an anime out of this, but we can't really have the adult bits in there. We need to take that out, so that we can make an anime to sell to like kids and stuff. So they did that, and that's sort of what everything has kind of spawned from. But I think I'm getting out of myself a little bit. So there was an adult version of the game. It caught fire. It became popular. So at some point they created a 15 and up game, which is not obviously not an adult game, and so they created a 15 and up version of the game. And I think that is sort of what everything else is truly more or less based on. The anime and stuff, all that stuff. And people online who were talking about it on Reddit and stuff were saying that like the like eroge parts of the game are literally kind of like 1% of the game. They're really not. It's really not all about that all that much. And also, they're saying that those parts are notoriously like bad, like badly like acted and badly. They're just funny, and there's like memes of them on the internet and stuff. Now they're just kind of made fun of. So so basically, I saw that this remaster was coming out right as I was kind of looking up some of this stuff, and I was like, so what kind of remaster is this? And I did have it confirmed that it is a remaster, but not of the original game. It's a remaster of the PSP Vita version. I forget which one. Basically, a I think it was a PSP. I'll just say PSP version of the game that came out a long time ago. So basically, they had released this for one of Sony's platforms, taking out all the bad stuff, and now that is what they are remastering. But yeah, so basically, that was kind of all of my story about my research dive into Fate Stay Night, and maybe if anybody is interested in starting Fate Stay Night, that would be the proper place to start. There is one person that I found online who was like, I don't want to play the game, I just want to do the anime. And then there's a pretty good Reddit article where somebody breaks it down, like if you want just the main story, if you want chronological, if you want how it was released. And that gave me a pretty good idea too about where to go with it. So yeah, that's what I know about Fate Stay Night.
Yeah, so like a lot of the eroges, they end up having a lot of them visual novels and stuff, popular, actually popular love stories and stuff like the Key Animation, people who make Clannad and Canon. They all technically are classified as eroge at first,
Mm,
only because they have like one or two scenes, like essentially the happy ending, as it were, or something like that. So the characters hook up and they hook up. So yes, and then what they do is when they bring it over to consoles, they can't have that stuff on consoles
Yeah.
for Japanese law, and so therefore they create the console version, which is um, the edited version, and that usually is what catches fire because it obviously hits more people, more mass market, and usually anime spin off of those. Um, I mean, popular ones, like I mentioned, were those, and also like Ute Wataru Mono, which was like famously a really good like RTS game that had a couple scenes, like cutscenes in it that were adult themed. But
Mhm.
then they came out with a console version, which was just the good gameplay, and that spawned multiple anime over time. Really solid story. And it's like I've discovered these things from watching anime and then being like, yeah, so what's the deal with these? Because
Mm.
it totally, seems like this should be like a dating sim or something, or like he obviously has a harem around him. So like, but
Yeah.
like, what's the story? But like, okay, so these are based off games. That makes sense. Fate is a tangled mess. I watched Fate Stay Night back in the day because it was super popular, and was like, yeah, it's okay. And then they came out with Fate Zero. Tried watching that. I'm like, all right. At some point, they dropped so many names and so many characters that you're supposed to read from the books as well, because there's a bunch of books and there's a lot of literary material and like literature. You're supposed to go ahead and like, oh, so this person connected to that, this and that, and the plus. I'm like, yeah, this is all a jumbled mess, and I'm not committed to any of like
Yeah.
I don't have a said waifu in this story arc, so therefore I'm not gonna stick to it just to watch for that. Um, and I just bounced. They've come so far from that series to make just a like side spin-off series and multiple like seasons of their spin-offs. Uh,
Yeah.
I I'm glad that I watched it because in the end I ended up through State Night. At the end, you get to see Gilgamesh and his like sword attack, which is been memed to death at this point. Essentially, he opens up a bunch of portals and like I forget now X amount, like 1,000 swords come out or something like that. And it's kind of the think about at the end of uh Stellar Blade when
Oh yeah.
Mother Sphere all of a sudden warps in all the enemy ships, or to fight. It's kind of like that situation, but with him pulling out a bunch of weapons to fight, to just decimate his enemy because he's the villain and that's how powerful he is. Um, but yeah, like I said, it is a cultural phenomenon that had happened, and because of that, it is forever like burned. Certain scenes are burned into like hit the pop culture referencing. You may not know the original source material, but by for sure
Probably.
you've seen the memes or things related, referencing it. So yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a fighting to boil it down, it's a story about a fighting tournament. That is
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Like, fighting tournament where, like, historical people from both fact and fiction are paired up with, modern day handlers. And so then you have it's like Pokemon. You have your fantasy people fight each other.
Yeah.
Um, it's pretty simple. I'm making it super boilerplate, but that's the gist of it. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to see a bunch of people fighting and having like stupid reimaginings of people throughout history, from Hercules to like King Arthur and like I'm pretty sure Jack the Ripper and everything, like everything else, like yeah, you can watch that happen. Um, it's not a bad anime, and it's just little but thing is they also had a bunch of other artists kind of be able to run with it, so that's why there's so many different spin-offs and so many different other things. It's a lot like, oh goodness, I'm forgetting, there was a running Toho, Project Toho.
Mhm.
The like whereas it was like an open source characters for the most part, like anyone can make anything they want with them. And so therefore you get everything from dating sims to top down shooters to RPGs, and it's kind of like flooding the market, and that's kind of what they did with this back in the day. Um, Now I think it's past its prime, uh, but once again, if you have any interest in that, for sure, give it a gander, I guess. I'm
Yeah.
not going to stop anyone. I wouldn't discourage people from it. I just thought it was too far up its own butt for me to really try to follow with it seriously.
Yeah, what people online, kind of So most people were pretty nice to that person, but there was like one person that was like, "Look, you just like they're like you got to play the game. That's you can play the game and then you can jump in anywhere you want on the anime, but you're not gonna understand what's really going on if you don't play the freaking what I don't even know how long it is, but I imagine like 20 to 40 hour visual novel." And it's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, just it's gonna have everything. That's sort of what everything is based off of anyway. But yeah, so that's kind of just the state of that situation. But yeah, thanks for your input on that. I didn't. I figured it's. I mean, I figured it's probably pretty decent, but also it's. You'd never really talked about it, and I figured you probably would have said something if it was really great.
It's usually a cautionary tale for me.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if you want to get into it, you got to be ready like to jump in. And I have a friend who bought a mouse pad just because they liked the way the character looked. And I'm like, you know that character's a guy, right? And they're like, well, I still like the way they look, so I'm keeping it. I'm like, good for you. They, but that's the thing. It's just like you pick a waifu and you roll with it. That's kind of the general gist of properties like that.
Yeah.
And no, it's like I said, it's not a bad series. It's just very because there's so much of it now. It is a you need a guide. It's like
Yeah.
saying, hey, I want the gist of the Marvel MCU. Well, like yeah,
Well,
it's too
I
much.
mean, watch them in order, and then when you give up, when you feel like giving up, you've gone far enough. Like,
Yeah, just give me the Cliff Notes version. I just need to watch what do I need to watch of which ones? But yes. All right.
yeah.
On top of that, we've at least I've been really busy this time around, so I've not been able to do too much gaming. And I'm pretty sure you're still dabbling in a bunch of small things, so you not really a lot to talk about, right?
Yeah, I have touched a I have been I've touched some video games. I did play a little bit more because it was nagging at me. I played a little bit more of Frostpunk, and there's something that I figured out, and it's something that I know, but I just can't make myself do. But anytime you have one of those management games or whatever, like it doesn't matter what it is. If there is a if there is a blip on the screen that says that you kind of need to deal with it, you have to deal with it. Like sooner rather than later. Like because I was having this really hard time where I would I'm not going to go into all the detail, but I was having this really hard time where I would keep kind of running into a problem that I just was like, I thought I'm solving this problem. Like, why won't it go away? And you just there, and I noticed this little tick mark down in the corner, and I was like, maybe I should just work on dealing with that. And I did, and lo and behold, that fixed this other problem, which fixed this other problem, which weren't big problems, but they were kind of there, which fixed another problem. And then all those things finally fixed the big problem that I was really trying to solve that I was never able to solve. And I was like, okay, yeah, duh, Nick. Every time there's a little, hey, do this eventually on the screen, you need to get to it, or else it's going to cause big problems. And anyway, so I resolved that, and I felt much better about putting it down after that. But yeah,
Follow the tutorial. Yeah, that maybe would help.
yeah, yeah. Who needs
All right.
tutorials?
So see, I'll talk a little bit about some of the anime that's kind of been popping up here. Uh, Real quick, for kids anime, Rising Impact. It's another golf anime.
Oh yeah,
You know, I mentioned golf anime last season, Tombo, which was like a cute little story. Felt like it was voice acted by like AI. Uh, so it was kind of like my guilty pleasure of the season because like this is kind of bad to watch, but it also reminds me of like Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that back when it first came out. Just it wasn't very good voice acting, but the story was okay. I mean, really nothing special. Totally pass over it. But this one's yeah, okay. So more or less. kid in the mountains lives with grandpa because folks are gone from this world, and so this woman who's a golfer because who happens to go out to hot springs. And she apparently always walks with her golf clubs because that's what you do when you're a pro golfer. You never leave your golf clubs alone. It's just like it's just like a an American with a firearm. You never leave home without it. So yeah, she's in the
It's true.
woods trying to go to a hot spring. She has her golf club with her, and then the bridge is out, so she ends up runs across a boy who takes her all this other way, and the entire thing is just an excuse to have a montage of like he has great lower body strength. This kid can run across like a log, and he has really good balance, and he runs up these hills, and he can carry my bag for me, and he has a lot of stamina, because he is essentially the shonen protagonist that has secretly been training and hasn't realized they've been training their entire life, and
Mm,
he's like 8 or something like that. It's ridiculous. Um, yeah, and just to boil it down to when he finally does get to swing a golf club, he doesn't care about golf. He just wants to be the best at hitting things far. So he wants to be a baseball player at first,
mm,
because that's because he doesn't realize a golf ball can fly farther. And when he discovers that, he's like, now golf is my passion because that is the sport in which you hit a thing far. I'm like, it is the most bare bones stupid thing I've ever seen, for an excuse to get this thing going. But whatever. Um, I've also watched a bunch of isekai, so it's just at this point with isekai, it's just like okay, skip the first 15 minutes of the isekai and get into the what are their powers. Let's go. Um,
just spin the barrel and put it in your mouth.
so it's just and he lo and behold, this little tiny elementary school kid can hit a golf ball over 300 yards, farther than she can as a pro adult woman, um, and it's just ridiculous. So. Um, I haven't given much more than, like, the first episode watch, but I was like I'm like, "You know what? This might be it might go so ridiculous to the point where it's actually okay." I'm not sure, but man, it's just like, this is I actually should look up to see what magazine originally printed this, because this if it's not a Shonen Jump or something like that, then, I don't know, because it just feels like it's just so old school Japanese of like over the top, like this kid is destined for this life, and lo and behold, Grandpa kind of hints at dead parent probably being a professional golfer, so it's in his
Mm,
blood or some garbage like that. Um,
okay.
you're like a childhood
Eh,
friend trope away from like the trifecta.
He doesn't. He
Um,
doesn't like pull a golf club stuck in a stone or anything, does he?
No, but like this random lady who happens to be carrying her golf bags and who happens to teach him golfing in the middle of the woods, then happens to be like, yeah, you can have my old golf club because I don't use this one anymore. So he automatically has a driver, and then at the end of the episode, uh, Grandpa, the lady kind of offers or says he needs to go out to get a real teacher and not be in the middle of like the boonies. And so Grandpa, she gave him the address to keep in contact, and he's just like, yeah, you can go live with that lady now. Go on your own. We didn't let her know it ahead of time, but we have her address. So you just get on a bus by yourself, go to the big city, find her. And I'm like, really? It's so dumb. And they have a season 2 that's being dubbed. So, yeah, it's amazing. So that's because it's already getting a season 2, I'm like, I gotta see where this like goes just because it might be my guilty pleasure of the year or of the season. We'll see. But something that is generally looking pretty good is the Elusive Samurai. So they have a few episodes out already in Japanese. And this season has a lot of good looking anime. Like just some anime that just is really animated just very crisply, has a good art style to it. Um was it the Too Many Failed Heroines? That one looks really amazing too. Like the first handful of episodes are solid. Uh so this is kind of one of them. It's like I just happened to look at it. I'm like, yeah, this is done really crisp. It has a decent art style, and it got episode 1 dubbed, so I gave it a shot, and it's all right. Now it's more of I'm not sure how historically accurate it's supposed to be, a feudal, Sengoku period esque thing. So unfortunately, my knowledge of that is slim to none. Can't really say how correct it is, but as far as the art style goes, and the story. The story is just um, the son of one of the local lords happens to be doing his like he's just a kid who just likes to play around. But he's naturally gifted at being elusive, uh, legitimately. Like he runs away from his wards or whatever who's trying to get him to like study, and he's just very good at running across rooftops and dodging people. So that is his like skill. He's born with that ability, and they get betrayed by one of their retainers. Their whole land gets scorched earth, and he has to flee. Um, and he's like, oh, I gotta die like my samurai family. So uh and then so the retainer's like, fine, you want to die, and he pushes him off a cliff towards the enemy. And then the kid naturally then uh evades a bunch of people. They end up like being so close to proximity they're actually killing themselves, miss swings and stuff. But he runs and finds his way back to the retainer, and they're like, okay, you've proven that you want to live, and now we can go, and we'll train you, and you'll be like the retainer is supposed to be like a Shinto prophet, and it's like I see that you'll become a great leader, and so we're gonna go ahead and raise you. So yeah, that's the gist of the story so far. Seems okay. Once again, art's really good, I think. So we'll see what's up. But yeah, this season I think overall like the art of the different a handful of anime has really been solid. The Suicide Squad anime. I mean, the story is meh, but they just had a fight scene like I forget now, episode 5 or something like that, or 6. But like some of the fight scenes have been really just good, as
Mhm.
far as just the quality of the animation. Um, Once again though, unfortunately, the story is just it is what it is. It's nothing special, but it's nothing bad. It's great background material. Only problem is if you're watching it in the background, you're not paying attention to the like some of the good fight scenes or the good quality animation.
Mm,
So you're kind of missing. You're getting the
the
worst of both worlds, I guess.
yeah,
So
you're just
you
only
should at
hearing the
least have it
worst
on
of
a
it.
second screen big enough for you to divert your attention to, opposed to like me having it on a small window or something like that, or like my phone while I'm doing the dishes or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I have stopped it, rewound it, and then watched the fight scene or something because I'm like, some of the stuff is pretty solid. But yeah, just overall, there's a handful of anime that I'm really impressed with. Yeah,
yeah.
that's it for now.
The Elusive Samurai. I remember a couple years ago that was kind of just starting. I feel like it wasn't very deep into the chapters on Shonen Jump. Um, and I listened to a little bit of anime podcasts at the time, and some of them were worried about it getting canceled because it wasn't being voted on super highly. Um, but I guess it was solid. It was doing okay. It just was like, well, if this could kind of this is sort of on the edge. If it really starts to slip, then it could be booted out. But I'm glad it got a show. I'm glad it looks good because that is always enticing. But yeah, so it's nice to see manga grow up into anime. Yeah, that's cool.
All right, all right then. And I didn't know if you wanted to go in. Yeah, I know we're crunched for time, but I didn't know if you wanted to go into the series you've been watching. If you
Yeah,
wanted
I'm
to save
not
that
I'm not
for
gonna say
more in
too
depth dive.
too much about it. I watched The Conjuring 1, 2, and 3. The Conjuring 1 and 2 are just named that, and The Conjuring 3 is called The Devil Made Me Do It. And because so yeah, kind of my dive back into horror more or less. And I always heard the first Conjuring was good, and I didn't really hear anything else about it. I didn't hear that the other ones were bad. I actually think they're all three pretty good. My biggest gripe with them is they are very jump scary. They are that they just sort of kind of lean into that kind of more and more heavily. But um, but like all things considered, they are they are pretty good. And I was actually surprised at how they're very pro. I mean, they're kind of pro Christian and more so like pro Catholic. Um, there is a lot of like because they're based on like real people's claims and how much you want to believe all that. You can do your own research, but basically they are based on what people are claiming, and the people that are claiming it were devout Catholics and devout demonologists or whatever. So there's a lot of references to prayer and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, this is that's kind of weird to see in a Hollywood movie, but they don't overplay it. I don't think, but it is all about like, hey, these are demons and they don't like Jesus. So we're going to give them some Jesus. We're going to give them some crosses and see how they like it. So there's kind of a lot of references to that. I do think the first one's probably the strongest. The second one was pretty good, very different, but pretty good. The third one, not a big fall off, but it was it was still just not quite there. But yeah, so some of the scenes in that first one, pretty freaky. There's a part where a ball bounces, and that had me wigged out real bad. But yeah, they do a good job of explaining it, and it's of what's going on, but also the mystery is interesting, and yeah, so I definitely enjoyed them. I'm sure everyone who's reasonably into horror has already seen them by now. But yeah, Vera Farmiga is the main lady, and I forget the actor, the dude's name, but you've seen him around. They both do a good job. Yeah, very enjoyable.
All right. Yeah, I mean, well, I would say the whole Catholicism and horror have been together since the beginning of anything demon related, from The Omen to The Exorcist. So it's kind of a trope as well at this point. The more you can tie in, the more you can kind of milk that for what it's worth. Now, I mean, I don't know, man. It's just like not much can be as good as the fire show that was End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger
Oh
in
yeah,
1990 film. Him just like there was that one, and there was shoot, Chuck Norris had one where it was pretty much him and the entire like Walker Texas Ranger crew uh doing the same thing, like fighting demons. But it wasn't like it was legit like at least three or four different members of Walker Texas Ranger all in this movie together, but
wow.
they weren't there. Like you should have just made it canon and made them their characters from Walker Texas Ranger just to be great, and then just make it a dream sequence for a Halloween episode or something.
That would have been
Uh,
just freaking great. Yeah,
yeah, just I don't
yeah,
know. When it comes to I've heard good things about The Conjuring. I've never heard it like put down. Uh, I'm Yeah, it's one of those things that a good psychological horror is always my cup of tea. When it
yeah,
comes to something like slasher or just gore, I'm really not the biggest fan of that. And jump scares, unfortunately, let's just they lose. I mean, they lose their effectiveness after a while. I mean, it's just uh,
yeah,
yes, it will startle you every time, but at the same time, it's just like it's not necessarily. Like for example, I think the last movie I watched that was horror related was Winchester, and that was not even. I find that wasn't horror related at all. Like
yeah,
it had some things, but it did like only like two jump scares, and that was it. And the other time I was just like, wow. And my wife like faced forward the entire time. She hates horror with a passion. She can't even have me watch BioShock. Like when I was playing that game, she couldn't even. She's like,
yeah.
she was too spooked by the ambiance.
It is
Um,
pretty spooky ambiance.
which that I mean, the splicers were terrifying as AF. So dude, I completely understand. But when it came to like, so if it's a movie that she can watch, then most definitely it's not scary.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, but that's the problem is most horror movies just are not in my wheelhouse, or they're too effective. I mean, like I think unless if you think of something like Pan's Labyrinth, which is amazing, or funny enough, I just saw an ad for was it the Babadook? It's like 10th anniversary, and I was just like, you know what? I always wanted to watch it, and Jesus, it's 10 years old. Oh man, I didn't
yeah.
realize it was like so.
The Babadook, I did see that, and you should watch that. I think just to say that you have. I don't know if you'll like it. I imagine you won't hate it, But the Babadook, after watching it, I was like, okay, I understand why people. I think I understand why people like this movie. It is good. I enjoyed it, but I will say that I don't think people like it because it is especially scary. I think that people like it because it is an efficient movie. It does. There's a lot of scenes where things happen that it skips because you don't need to see it. It just like something starts to happen and then it skips to like after, and they're kind of just left there. Then you're like dealing with that. So it keeps the main thing throughout, and it's also artistically pretty good as well. And it does have some pretty creepy stuff in it, but yeah, yeah.
All right.
Babadook's good.
On that note, yeah, little shorter episode today. But if you made it to the end, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been another Dead Pixel, episode 87. And Nick, what are the words of wisdom you have for the people out there?
Um, Whenever you are driving, make sure that you signal if you're gonna turn, um, and don't signal if you're not gonna turn.
Yeah. Uh, I once saw a post or a joke, someone saying, if you ever think your job is useless, just remember that there is someone who gets paid to put turn signals in BMWs.
That's pretty good.
All right.
That's so funny.
Well, y'all, thanks again. And until next time, take it easy.
Bye.